How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and today I'm taking a look at a game called Another Brick in the Mall, which is an obvious reference to the Pink Floyd song, Another Brick in the Wall. For those who aren't aware of what a mall is, I believe it is a fairly American concept where you basically have a bunch of smaller stores under the roof of a larger store. Now, the game is currently in early access, so I wasn't expecting a whole lot because early access games and all that, but it brings some interesting concepts to the table, but overall it's nothing all that revolutionary. So what I'm going to do here, we have a bunch of different save files. I've been playing it for probably about 3 hours now. I've tried some different games. The one that I'm going to load is actually a test game, which I approve of. I'm glad that they do stuff like this because there you get a good view of what your empire could be, your mall empire. I approve of this because a lot of times when we get into the realm of games that require originality or just general creativity, it is difficult to actually come up with something of your own without first seeing somebody else's work to base your own work on. So to get an idea of what sort of works in the end, it gives the player sort of an end goal to strive towards. It gives them a little bit of a game plan that they can shoot for while actually building something that is actually feasible, and they know that they're not going to make a ton of mistakes. But you can see there are a lot of people just loitering around here. They're getting run over by cars, I would imagine. Look at them just walk right through the intersections on streets without a care in the world. Now, you might be noticing that there's no background music, and I really don't understand why not. Like, there is plenty of royalty-free background music available just online that you can include in your game, and it's much better at setting the mood than no music at all. Games, they just feel so empty if you don't have any background music, no ambience. I mean, that is really what the problem is here, is that there's no ambience whatsoever aside from a few cars turning off and turning on, or starting up and driving. So like, there was no mall chatter, there were no footsteps sounding anywhere. It feels very sterile at the moment. And of course, I imagine this is going to change, but I think it is something that would increase the overall experience quite significantly without a huge investment on the part of the developer. It's not going to take that long, I don't imagine, to actually just throw in some ambient noise. And I think it would make a big improvement for people who are playing the game. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not why people are playing the game. And as you can see, there are a lot of people loitering around in these shops. And that's the idea behind it, is you're going to be setting up different shops. For example, over here we have, let me see here. You have a movie theater right here. So that you have your Sims, or whatever you want to call these little characters. I imagine that's some original artwork, which is nice because we've sort of seen this style used before with games such as RimWorld and Prison Architect, but it's nice to see that it is not sort of just a copy of that same art style. This art style actually is a little bit more detailed. A lot of the people have very distinctive looking faces and whatnot. But then you have like a diner right here. You have different dining tables. I'm not sure if I think this is like a fast food diner. Then you have right here's a warehouse, obviously. That's where your employees go ahead and get the goods that they can restock shelves with. And when it comes to your shelves, there are tons of different categories of items that you can sell on them. And overall, I think that is sort of one of the failings of the game, is because when it gets super scaled like this is pretty massive. The game still requires a lot of local level micromanagement. So like, there's no way so I can just drag and select a whole group of shelves and then assign them to one category of good. As far as I'm aware, you actually have to go and right click each one of them and then spelunk through these context menus, of which there are up to 3, I think. And keep in mind, if you accidentally mouse outside of them, okay, it doesn't. I thought it would close. Okay, that's a little bit better than I thought it was. I thought if you moused outside the context menu, it would actually close, but it doesn't. But overall, it doesn't seem like it's the optimal way to actually select the good type for those shelves. Like, I can't move the map by dragging, left dragging with the mouse cursor. So what exactly is that function needed for the majority of the time? The majority of the time, I'm not going to be placing roads down throughout the game, or I'm not going to be laying foundations down. So there's no reason. For example, here, if I go build foundation, I can drag out a foundation like that. But I'm saying there was no reason that for the majority of the time, like when you have the select button selected, that you couldn't be allowed to navigate the map simply by click dragging. This has become an increasingly more popular method of navigating such worlds with, I mean, even Civilization 6, you can do it now compared to like Civilization 4 back in the old days when you always had to use the edge scrolling. And for the record, this game does not have any edge scrolling either. So what you end up doing to mouse around, either you gotta click and hold the mouse wheel, which I imagine sort of varies by the mouse, how efficient that will be. I know I've used some cheaper mice that were just terrible in terms of the mouse wheel and actually clicking and holding it to move around. My current Logitech mouse is not a problem, but it's not a uniform experience, let's say. It's not something I would be able to count on across the board, that the player's overall experience would not be detracted from simply because of this this volatile method of movement. You can also use the arrow keys or WASD. So it's not entirely unreasonable, but this is a sort of simulation game where I think it's understandable that you might not have to use the keyboard. Like you might be playing it more casually and not more like real-time strategy, RTS, kind of keyboard shortcuts and all that stuff. That's just my opinion on it, though. When it comes to like the overall objective of the game, it is essentially like, here we have my statistics. You're trying to make money. There's really no bigger goal than that. There are little objectives from time to time. Right now we don't have any because this is a test map. I could load one of the maps I was actually playing and you'd be able to see what some of the objectives that they had laid out for me. It was like make $10,000, get 500 people. And so those goals, they're called objectives from time to time with the little reward for them. They sort of point you in the right direction. It's like a light form of hand holding, which I approve of. I think that's really the best way to sort of introduce the player to the game in a way that allows them a lot of agency themselves, allows them to make a lot of choices, but at the same time points them in the general direction that they need to go in to make their empire, I guess in this case their food court or their mall empire, successful. So that's positive. I approve of that. And one thing it sort of falls into the same category as managing store shelves, and that is managing the employees and managing the customers. So for example, this store has, what, 3, 6, 7, about 8 just cashiers in the store right now. Now, if you want to actually fire one, you want to hire another one, you want to adjust their hours, you got to go to manage. You got to select the store. I'm not even sure where the store is. They're not very clear. They just have like a store number 26, number 27, and I don't think you can rename them. Oh wait, we can rename them. Okay, that's better. So that would give you a better idea of where it is. But for this default map, there was named Store 34. So not quite as bad as I thought. But if I want to manage the employees that work here, we can go to staff, and that's a lot of cashiers. Now, if I want, I mean, you can't control click, you can't shift click. If I want, for example, to say that we need to increase their wage, for example, right now the salary is set to auto for them, but if I can set a manual salary, can you imagine going through each and every one of them and adjusting their salary? Can you imagine adjusting their hours? Because you can adjust their hourly work rate here, I believe, as well. I'm not exactly sure. How do we do that? Okay, opening hours and closing hours, I suppose. But it comes back to the same old problem of the game becomes so massive, and at the same time, the management for the employees and the customers does not increase on that same scale. As far as I'm aware, like if I want to fire these characters, you got to do it individually. Each and every single one of them has to be fired individually, which in some ways makes sense because there will be some with better traits. For example, this one is very sociable. Well, relatively, it's average sociability. Let's try to find one with higher sociability. Right here is one with very high sociability. Obviously, you would not want to fire this person from working at the checkout, whereas somebody with low sociability, like maybe this character here, yeah, more likely to go. But at the same time, if you're clearing out a store, if you just want to sort of bulldoze it down, you really don't want to fire everybody at the same time. I mean, you do want to just fire everybody at the same time, and the game really doesn't allow you to do that. I've mentioned this before when it comes to build menus and whatnot. There is sort of like a common consensus in just like design philosophy, design theory, whatever you want to call it, for user interfaces. And that's why we have Windows, and all the applications that run under Windows generally will have a close button in the upper right corner next to a minimize, maximize, and a Windows button, or a windowed button. the same sort of thing applies to a lot of simulation games. There was a reason why a lot of the commands are generally down at the bottom of the screen. It's just easier to look for. It's easier than looking up in the right corner, or it's the right corner of your screen all the time. Every time you want to build something, it's just having it down here is just easier for the player to look at. And if you don't believe me, why do you think every single real-time strategy game or just any major management simulation game has the bar that you use to build stuff at the bottom center of the screen? And like you have the mini map at the center left or the bottom left or the bottom right, and it's the same thing. And even if there isn't like a noticeable difference between the two areas, people are used to having it down at the bottom. So there is a sort of a feeling of familiarity if you also put that toolbar, whatever you want to call these menus, if you also put it down there at the bottom of the screen, there's a sort of sense of familiarity. And even though it uses drop-down menus, you can make these drop up. You can make them pop up instead. And maybe I'm just being too controlling here in terms of, I mean, obviously I didn't design the game or anything. I don't know exactly what the reason for this was, but personally, when I'm playing this game, it's inconvenient to have to look off to the right side all the time so much when I'm looking for building different stuff. I can understand it from the sense of, well, you want to keep these things out of, say, for example, the screen real estate here when you're building. For example, if I want to build a storage area, so I select that and then I want to drag it out. If it's still popped up in the middle of the screen, that can get a bit distracting, but you can also have collapsing menus that will collapse after you've selected what you wanted. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just has struck me in a couple of games where they did this and I really didn't understand the entire reason for it. It could be changed in the future, obviously, but I might be getting a little bit far afield here from the actual sort of gameplay itself. There just isn't a whole lot to it. Like, you have different venues, you have your movie theater, you have your storage, you have your general store, you have your food courts, you have your fast food restaurants, you have your diners, all that kind of stuff. And as far as I can tell, just more people continually come all the time, providing they're not really unhappy. Like, if you have more customers that get unsatisfied and leave, and they won't come back tomorrow. But like, I've had really long lines and I still got more customers the next day. So I'm not exactly sure how big the impact is. Maybe it just overall slows your growth long term. But it just doesn't seem as impactful as it might, and a lot of that information is not very well illustrated. If we go to needs, for example, I imagine this is demand and then supply. The green would be supply, the orange would be demand. So as you can see, fast food, there is some pretty high demand for it, 800. And based on our sales from yesterday, like a little bit over half of that demand was fulfilled. And I'm not exactly sure how that factors into the likability of your area or your mall. Is it better? Are you going to have a faster rate of growth if you meet these demands? Is it going to decrease your profit margin? It's like, it can go either way, and you kind of have to sort of strike a happy balance between the two of them, I think. There's also research in the game. In this map, everything has been researched, but in a normal game, the research is simply accomplished by playing through game hours. So when it says 24 out of 96 hours, that's not your time, but how many hours have elapsed within the game. So you can speed it up and slow it down. Like, there are three different speeds. There's default, and there's fast forward, and then really fast forward, as well as pausing. I'm glad they included pause, because some games don't do that, and they really should, because that's the nice thing about being able to pause a single-player game. This is a single-player game. You can pause it and then sort of make some plans. You can take your time to plot stuff out without being pressured by the natural game flow. Right now I'm in the hole a little bit for today, but that's just because the selling day sort of just started. Yesterday, we were profitable, gross profit of $97,000, and maybe it is not quite fair that I set this map up. I just sort of wanted to give you an idea of what you could do, because I think that's more impressive than just showing you what I actually accomplished. So I'm now going to load right here. This is a game that I started playing, and I played through the tutorial and everything. And one thing I will recommend if you're playing through the tutorial, make sure to, when you're first starting the game, select the option for fast builders. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there waiting for them to build your first building, your first store, even at the maximum fast forward speed, it's going to take about 3 minutes of you just waiting for them to do it while you're not really doing anything. And I think that, what can I say? That's a bad way to introduce a player to the game, because you really want to put the strongest sell on them right away. Like, you want to introduce them to the maximum fun to get them to stay around. And when they don't have anything to do for 3 minutes or so by default, obviously when you have the game sped up, when you have the option sped up for fast building, it becomes much less of an issue. But it just seemed a little bit strange to me that by default it was set to like normal speed, and then you end up wasting about 3 minutes just waiting for them to build that first store. Maybe it just lets you get to grips better with it. I'm not sure, but that's the way it struck me anyway. So in my store, I have a few cash registers going, checkout counters, I guess they're called, as well as different assortments of food. I have 3 fridges, 3 tables stocked with fresh bread. Then we just have regular food shelves, these are like household goods. The white shelves generally are more household goods versus the food shelves, which are orange. And like I said, the only way you can really manage them is by right-clicking each and every single one of them and then selecting stuff. And that is one way. I mean, this is one area where it could improve. For example, you've seen the needs, right? We have a lot of demand for fast food, for example. When you right-click through these menus, there's no ability to see what things that you could select here right now are in high demand, and that would make it a lot easier. I think it would be a lot easier just in general if you could select multiple shelves and then set them to whatever. But if that's not practical, if it actually has a real world impact on the game, what sort of diversity you have in terms of products, I don't know if you set 6 of your shelves to sell the exact same thing, how badly that will impact your bottom line when you have a massive store. But it just seemed to me that the scalability is not there. And also, it's just not very friendly in terms of giving the player information at their fingertips. They have to keep going back through menus to actually see all this stuff. I mean, there is a lot of stuff here you can sell, and to remember, much less expect the player to go back and forth between this screen and perhaps selecting the shelves. It just seems a little bit unreasonable to me. I mean, maybe you could make the case where it's not all that important. Maybe it isn't all that important. How important is it that the items that I'm selling on my shelves are like varied, that you have a wide variety of items for sale in the store? Is it that important? I don't even know. At the end of the day, and that is one of the ways I think the game sort of still needs to be developed, to that aspect of it, the scalability, the ease of management when you get to higher levels. Like right now at this level, this little local level, it's easily managed. Like, it's fun. Let's speed it up here. You got your garbage disposal. I'm not exactly sure how to take that away yet. So far as just sort of accumulated on that square. Maybe the garbage truck comes once a day. I haven't seen it happen, but it's possible. You also have your delivery right here. They will arrive from time to time and deliver the boxes into your storage room, and then your storage workers or your cargo workers, what are they called? Let's see, or manage. And we want to look at staff. They would be called janitors, I imagine. Really, janitors? No, that's not right. Here we go, store, staff. They would be called the stock clerk. Yeah, they manage your inventory. So whenever the stock truck comes by to drop off more goods, they'll take them out of the truck, put them in the storehouse, and then take them out of the storehouse and put them on the shelves as the shelves empty throughout the day as your customers come in and buy stuff off the shelves. Your parking is pretty straightforward, I think. This is staff parking right here, where the areas where it says no parking. I'm not exactly sure how efficient the parking lot layouts can be. Like, I've just seen people in general just wander around lawns. Like, you could leave I could build a store over here, and all the people just wander across this lawn to actually get to the store. Like, they don't seem all that particular. And it sort of comes back to some of the things I was saying before. Let's slow us down a little bit here. We've got some customers coming in. They're looking at the shelves, seeing what we have to buy. And at this local level, it's a lot more manageable. It's actually kind of fun to watch them peruse the inventory and select stuff and check it out and whatnot. But each and every single one of these customers has their own satisfaction meters and all that kind of stuff. And when you back it all the way out like this, and you have thousands probably of these little people running around, are you really going to check the stats in any of them? I don't think so. And that's why I think there needs to be more of an overall, like maybe a heat map to see what areas are underperforming, what areas are the most upset, whereas the ones that are happy could be green, upset ones are red. I think when you're looking at a scale that big, that's almost a requirement, because you're no longer able to look at the people as individuals anymore. It's simply too time consuming and too inefficient. But when you can look at them more as a demographic, like who is unhappy, who is happy, you know, what areas need to be improved and why, I think that would help a lot. So there's a stock clerk. Hopefully he'll be taking out the garbage pretty soon. Is this one taken out? No, that was the food delivery one. But yeah, there's some garbage laying right there on the floor, more garbage. And it appears the stock clerk is now taking some of the garbage out. How's that looking? Pretty good. Yeah, there you go. Still have not cleared my garbage out yet, though. But I think that pretty much sums up my thoughts on Another Brick in the Mall. Like I said, it is an early access game, so a lot is due to change. But at the moment, I really couldn't recommend the game. I didn't really have a lot of fun with it. But that is just my personal opinion on it. It's not a bad game. It definitely shows a lot of promise, but it is not nearly as compelling to me as, for example, RimWorld. But that's just probably because I'm a little bit more into simulation, or like survival simulation, than just economic simulation. I did find the idea of building up like a mall with a whole bunch of stores inside a compelling idea, similar to the High Rise video that I did a couple months back that was talking about Project High Rise, another game that's similar to this, except it was more vertical than this one is. Overall, it's not bad. It shows a lot of promise here. A lot of effort was put into this, but I think it could still use a lot more polish before I would actually enjoy playing it for extended periods of time. But, you know, what do you think of it? I'd like to know, I'd like to hear what you have to think in the comment section below, as always. And also, thank you very much for watching if you made it all the way to this point in the video, and I hope to see you next time.